And that's why it keeps growing as the hurt keeps growing over time, because your disappointment keeps growing.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever noticed how many times your kids, if you're trying to address something in their life, or they're trying to tell you about something that happened at school, and it's never their fault?
Yes.
It's not my fault.
Well, or when you're talking about even a grade. In my household, or talking to other students, you'll say something like, they'll say they're struggling, they got a bad grade on something, and then they'll say, well, that teacher's just crazy.
Yeah, it's not my fault.
I've heard that so many times.
Yeah.
It's definitely passing on the blame is something it's becoming a part of what we do in society.
Mm-hmm. If we want to be so quick to say, it's not my fault, I don't need to do anything about it because I didn't make this happen, so it's not my fault. This happened to me. They're at fault. They should correct it. But so often we want the person who was at fault to take responsibility and ignore our responsibility in the situation.
Yes. You know, when I was going through an event that happened early in my life, when I was, it was early in the time that I started coaching with I had a coach and I was coaching with him, and I was talking about an event in my life, and he very clearly let me know that I don't need that person to make it right with me.
Yes.
In order for me to be able to let go of that event. And I think that's very different than what we feel naturally.
Mm-hmm.
Naturally, we feel like if we have been wronged, that somebody owes an apology to us, or they need to make it right before we can move past it.
Right. But then that just holds us in this place of being stuck where bitterness and anger can build. And we may want them to take responsibility, but the fact is we have a responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
In the situation. We have a responsibility to ourselves, to our health, to our heart, to the people in our lives. So it doesn't matter if we were raised by alcoholic parents, or you were abused as a child, or your business partner cheated you out of your life savings that you had invested, or your spouse had an affair. Were they at fault for those things? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But it kind of doesn't matter, because we have a responsibility to our own lives to say, this is not going to define me. This is not going to ruin me. This is not going to make me bitter. I'm going to choose to show up differently. I'm going to choose to forgive. I'm going to choose to get the help that I need so that I don't duplicate those same behaviors that I thought were so terrible when they happened to me.
Yeah, so that's really good. So one of the things you mentioned, because what I was thinking in my mind is, what happens if we don't take responsibility for our end of it, for the healing, for the letting go of it? What if we don't take responsibility?
Yeah.
So what are some things that will come from that? Being like, no, I've been wronged and I'm going to stay here. Well, one of them that you just said was duplicating the behavior.
Yeah.
I mean, we see that all the time in families when somebody has been abused, there's been an addiction in the household, some such sort of violation, then that continues through generations, because there's just this anger or this emotion that's being held on to, which causes the violation to happen all over again in the next generation. So what are some other things? So let's say we've been wronged and we're choosing not to move on past it until somebody makes it right with us. Then let's talk about the emotions let's talk about the actions and the emotions that happen if you decide to stay there. So
oh my goodness,
duplicating the behavior. What are some other things that may transpire because of that?
addictions can spawn from that.
Mm-hmm.
Like we talked about, bitterness and anger can come from unforgiveness.
And you mentioned that it starts to affect your health. We've talked about that way in a previous episode, what bitterness can do to your physical health.
Yeah.
It will, your relationships. So if this is something that comes from a parental relationship, then your relationships with your children can become damaged, not authentic.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And we tend to also protect ourselves. We protect ourselves because we've been hurt before. We certainly are not going to be hurt again. And then that protection prevents us from having really wonderful relationships in our life. It prevents us from having great relationships with our spouse or with our kids or with other women or, coworkers. Yeah.
If you don't let go of that grip that somebody has on your life, it will affect those around you. And if you have children, it will affect your children. So it'll be a generational curse that's on your family. So think about this. I don't know why I was thinking about this the other day, and you guys might be like, oh, that's a pretty dark thought. Why were you thinking about this? I was doing the dishes and started thinking about generational curses and how generationally things get passed down. And I was thinking about a man who molested his daughter, right? And then his daughter had children. Well, his daughter allowed him to be around those girls. Those girls are damaged. They are hurt. They are violated. And they're going to have these emotions and situations that we're talking about, like addictions and anger and bitterness, feeling unworthy and dirty. Okay, I'm sure the mom felt the same way. He dies, and that child has children who are now having to live with this mom who is emotionally unstable, maybe, has addictions, trust issues. Okay, that's 3 generations removed from this man who's not even walking the earth. But because no generation said, I need to get help for this, I'm struggling with this, it was just one of those family sins that get swept under a rug. Look how that compounds generationally. And you can think, well, it's not that big of a deal. Like, you're kind of blowing this out of proportion, but it's not. And if you can identify this much dysfunction somewhere within your family and ask the question, where did this come from? Why does this person within my family behave a certain way? Why do I behave a certain way? Why, when I can't get in touch with my spouse for 10 minutes, do I have like anxiety inside of me? And like, why does my blood pressure go up? Or if my kids are just asking me question after question after question, and I lose it, or I have to say something over and over and over, and then I lose it. I get angry and I'm a yeller. Why am I a yeller? Just asking that question. And then here's the beautiful part. You can say, because that's how I was raised. The reason that most abusers are abusers is because they were abused. And you would think, no, if somebody was abused, they would be the last person that would abuse somebody else. It's what you know. It's what you're brought up with. It's like what gets programmed inside of you if you choose not to deprogram that. And so if you just ask that question and then realize yeah, you could point fingers and say, that's his fault or her fault or that situation's fault, the market's fault, whatever. It doesn't matter who's at fault.
Right.
I have a responsibility to myself. I have a responsibility to my life. This is the only life I'm going to live. Why would I let somebody who died decades before I was born have an influence in how I show up in my life? Like that was just an example I was thinking about how this whole thing could play out.
Well, or if we want to take it on a level that's, like there's definitely people that have been abused that can relate to that immediately.
Yes.
Just something that someone said to you that really hurt you.
Mm-hmm.
That person may never remember they even said it. Because to them, it was just some off-the-cuff comment. But it caused, it hurt you. It caused damage in you. And it's something that repeats in your mind like a broken record player throughout your life.
Right.
So then when your spouse makes a comment 10 years later, and it strikes that chord of that original hurt that you had way back when, then you sharply come back at your spouse, or you shut them down or shut them out, or eventually it may even lead that you rid them of your life altogether because of something that damaged you a long time ago. Right. And that person doesn't even know it. So immediately once we start thinking, when we start digging deep and finding these places of hurt, we think there's some people that think I need them to make it right. And you really don't.
No.
You need to figure out why you feel the way you do. And then you need to be able to let it go.
Yes.
And it doesn't mean that people are able to walk on you, because that is a completely different, or you allow people to continue to speak things into you that cause you pain or violate you.
Absolutely.
So that's where setting up guardrails, making rules, making hard stops, what you will and will not allow in your life, like setting those up are so incredibly important. But going back and using a past event and then expecting some retribution from that to heal you, it's not going to happen. I one time I had a conversation with somebody that the person that had violated them had apologized. And I believe it was an authentic apology. I mean, it was a for real, I'm so sorry. But the pain was so deep and it had been going on for so long that apology didn't make the pain go away. And so there was this continuous anger that was brewing as if there needed to be more apology. They needed to do something more. They needed to make some kind of life change to make up for it. And it was finally that I said to them, what do you think it's going to be that's going to finally make you feel better? Do you think that if they crawled across the road to get to you on their hands and knees and the road was full of glass, would that finally be the thing that would show you that their apology was true and they cared enough? And the person couldn't answer the question.
Right.
Because there wasn't an end of what can make the hurt stop, because the hurt was what they had to deal with inside of them. It didn't have anything to do with the other person anymore.
Yeah.
It was healing that they needed to have. So the I'm sorries didn't matter. It was dealing with the pain that they were feeling.
Nobody could apologize enough to heal a hurt heart that's harboring unforgiveness. And that's the beautiful thing about forgiveness. You can forgive regardless of what the other person does, if they ask for forgiveness or not. The only thing that comes, or the beautiful thing that comes from a true apology, is a restored relationship, or the potential for a restored relationship. But your personal healing won't come from that apology.
Oh my gosh, that's so good, Dee Dee.
Yeah.
That is so good.
It's so true.
Yes, it is true. It is true. And
yeah.
But we hang on the apology thinking it's going to fix the way we're feeling.
Yes. Because, why? We're busy pointing fingers to saying, you are at fault for my pain. You need to take responsibility for what you did to me. And we're ignoring that we have the responsibility to our own life, to our own healing, to our own. I love saying we are responsible to our own hearts, because it's true. People will hurt us in this world. They will. Some intentionally. I think a lot more unintentionally. But we're going to get our feelings hurt. We're going to get our hearts hurt. And we could walk around with that pain and that brokenness that's just going to turn into bitterness. It's going to be like a scab. We're going to have like a hardness to our hearts.
And loneliness.
Loneliness, yeah.
You just sit in your own stuff by yourself. And that is just not how we're supposed to live.
But it's so exciting to think about the fact that it doesn't matter who's at fault in the situation. I have a responsibility to myself. I have a responsibility to the Lord if I'm a believer. I have a responsibility to my children if I'm a mom, or to my coworkers, or to my friends, my spouse. Like, I didn't think through this order. It was just how it came to mind. I probably should have reordered these. But, like, we have that responsibility, I believe, to other people. And the fact is, we are going to hurt other people.
Yes. That's a huge...
Yeah.
When we're in pain, we have this tunnel vision of what's been done to us without being able... really looking at the fact of the humanness of this world. Like, people hurt people, hurt people, hurt people. And then when we're hurt people, we hurt people. And if we don't extend grace, then how do we expect it to be extended to us?
Yeah. And I think a lot of the people that we will hurt in life is unintentional. I would hope it would be unintentional. And we might not even know that we hurt them. And they may not ever tell us, but they could be harboring something in their hearts. But if we can say, okay, I'm sorry if I did hurt you. But it doesn't matter what I did, truly. You can live free of that pain. You can live free of that anger, of fear. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And I think I'm sorry is super powerful. Like, when somebody says it authentically, I'm sorry, when they mean it, when their heart hurts, when it's in their gut, an authentic apology is so important to do. But most of the time it's important, like, if I hurt you, it's very important to me that I authentically apologize to you.
Yes.
Like, that is important actually for me to be able to be at peace.
Yes.
So
for sure.
If you hear it, it can be powerful for you. But on the other hand, it may change nothing if you continue to stay in the place of, like, being resentful or being angry or not being able to deal with your stuff.
And when you realize your apology to somebody, you owning it when you did hurt somebody, you owning it when you were wrong, your apology, the purpose of that is not to make yourself as little as possible or as awful as possible, or the purpose in apologizing is to restore the relationship with that person. And when you go to it that way, and we even talked about this, like the difference between I'm sorry and I sincerely apologize for. When you name what you're apologizing for, when you name that wrong you did, and then if the purpose is to restore that relationship, you're seeing that person. Because you're apologizing for what you did, but then you're acknowledging the pain that it caused too. And man, that is special. Like that touches you a deeper way. But let's say that person is like, well, I just don't think I can ever forgive you. It's not on you. Because guess what? They have a responsibility to themselves, you know?
Right. And that is what's sitting on their heart. Like, yeah, you're absolutely right.
So you should not walk around allowing that person to beat you up all the time, to make you feel guilty all the time about something you did that did hurt them. You sincerely apologized and made a change. Now, if you were just like, I said I'm sorry. I said I'm sorry. Be like, okay, first of all, that's not even an authentic apology.
No, and you know the one that bugs me too, the I'm sorry, but.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but you did this.
Yes.
Okay, hold on. Are you really sorry? So
yeah,
definitely the authenticity of the apology, like where is it coming from? It absolutely matters, but it's not necessary.
It's not necessary for you to be
for you to be able to
or
heal. Yeah.
When you see it that way, it's just going to be an indicator of what is the potential for our relationship moving forward.
And if you sit around expecting it and it never comes, then you are continuing to set yourself up for disappointment by this person. And that's why it keeps growing as the hurt keeps growing over time, because your disappointment keeps growing.
And you know, it may be that maybe you're afraid that's a little bit true, what they said. Maybe there's some fear around, maybe that was right. Maybe this business failed because I wasn't good enough. Maybe I'm not smart enough to do this. Like those self-doubts start to creep in, which we don't want to look at, right? So let me just look at how bad you are. The person who hurt me, you know? And you're like, stop. When you take responsibility, you're not putting up these shields of, I'm not looking at myself because it's too painful. I'm just going to project my anger and resentment on somebody else. Okay, then all that goes away and you get to have this beautiful look into your own heart and then start to address those things. Maybe I am afraid I'm going to fail. Maybe I am afraid I'm going to succeed. You know, but maybe I do feel like maybe I am going to, if I look deep into the mirror, see that I'm not good enough. And maybe that is that's what I'm afraid I'm gonna see, right?
Well, maybe I am a bad friend to them.
Yeah.
Maybe I've been a really crappy wife.
Yeah.
Maybe I haven't been showing up for my family the way that I should. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, all those things being said to us, it may hurt us bad, but taking an opportunity to also address what's being said with a clear mind. That's why you have to take out some of the gunk, the anger that you have. You don't think clearly when you are totally ticked off what somebody says to you. You're only thinking from that aggressive like place inside of us. So being able to come to peace with it and then saying, okay, what was said and is it true? Just asking, is that true?
And how would relationships change? How would you show up differently in a relationship if all thoughts had to come off, if you let go of all thoughts about that person, what their fault is this, and they wronged me this way? Like, if you weren't thinking about this, you would completely show up differently to that person. So your relationship could be different just because you have let go, you have forgiven that fault, and
and that's all on us anymore. That's all on us.
100%.
Yeah.
Now, I do like what you brought up. If you are in a situation that is you're habitually being violated. And sometimes I think you and I throw that violated word around, but it means something different to us than it might mean to other people.
Yeah, I think it has a wider spread maybe meaning to us.
Mm-hmm.
Because for some, there maybe be, they would think of like being raped or
Right.
sexually abused as a violation, or being knocked around with a fist.
Right.
And when I think of violation, I think of somebody being passive aggressive consistently with their language with me, or having expectations on me and then getting angry, like, so that is, it's my definition of that word is probably has a wider meaning than maybe somebody that it automatically triggers something in them.
So you could almost say a violation is anything that someone could do where you could then hold them at fault for.
Mm-hmm.
Because it hurt you.
It caused some harm. Anything that somebody could do that could cause some harm.
Yes.
And that may just be some words.
Mm-hmm. It could be lying.
Mm-hmm.
It could be telling half-truths.
Yep.
I think that's something that we don't recognize enough.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we know we're being lied to, but it's in this half-truth little box that
so it's not really a lie.
Not really a lie.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, that still violates your trust with that person.
So I think of a violation like at a soccer game or a lacrosse game or a sports when they throw the flag. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like, we got a problem. We got a problem. So that's where I think of violation. Like, we have a problem.
And I think that would be from our training over the years.
Yes.
For sure. And that is something that when I've been with coaching clients and I would say, well, that violation from your childhood. No. Nobody molested me. Oh, I know that. But you had an alcoholic parent or a passive aggressive mother or, that's not triggered as a violation. So, but yeah, I love this idea that it seems like so many people want to hold other people at fault and demand that they take responsibility. This is personally within individual lives and relationships. This is globally pick a topic, right?
Mm-hmm. Nope, absolutely.
And it kind of talks about what we have talked about before with propaganda and marketing and all of that. We need to be responsible consumers. Well, we need to be responsible people, and just take that responsibility for, this may have been done to me, but I have a responsibility to myself, to my heart, to my life.
Yeah.
To show up.
And then that creates a happier, healthier, more joy-filled environment to live in.
Yeah.
Instead of staying in a place of darkness and then trying to operate from that.
Oh, yeah. And then it almost becomes an opportunity because you're like, okay, this is an opportunity to really learn and to really grow. So I'm going to be healthier from this, but I can help somebody else too. Mm-hmm. I can intentionally show up in a way that's different than what I was shown up for. I can act in a way that's different intentionally than how somebody acted to me. And then you get to see the fruit of that effort, which is really cool.
Yep. Showing up different inspires people even when you don't know it. And then they start showing up different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then it becomes really fun. But it's also not a one-time. It's not a one and done thing. And I think that's something we need to realize as well, because the truth is when we are hurt, we're hurt. Mm-hmm. And it could be a memory. It could be a comment, like you said, that triggers that hurt again, that can immediately take you right back to that moment of insecurity, fear, doubt, shame, even, like whatever it is. Just because maybe for 10 years you've been walking free from that, you might see somebody or an event happen and you're like,
I feel like a 5-year-old girl all over again.
Yes.
No, that's absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up because people also may feel like a failure when it comes to forgiveness. If they believe, okay, I forgave them, and then again something shows up and it creates that physical reaction or that mental fear all over again, and then you just feel like you can't. Like sometimes you have to just keep working at it. It's pulling the roots. It's like a weed. The weed, like you just pop the weed off at the top and you think, okay, we're good. Like my grass is clean now. But the weeds are deep rooted and you have to get them from the roots. And sometimes you can't just get it all with one pull. Like it really is this continuing dig deep. But the more you recognize where reactions that you have come from, then it's easier to pull those roots because you may have that immediate reaction again that you feel like that 5-year-old little girl and you want to crawl in a corner, or immediately you get super angry because you react the way you did before. But if you're able to see it, then you're able to stop yourself and say, okay, what is happening here and where is this coming from? I got to keep pulling those roots and keep working them out until eventually it's gone. But it does take work. And there's people that work really hard to pull the roots in their life so that they can move past it. You and I have worked really hard to pull some deep roots in our lives. But it's always worth moving forward because I do want to live a life and I want to show up with joy. And I want people to be inspired to love their life because they're around me. And so I have to keep doing the work that it takes and I don't want it to be fake. I want it to be real. I want to really show up for people. But that means I have to keep going through my junk, but also that's why we're doing this, to let people know that they can keep working through their junk too. But personal responsibility is huge because as long as you're trying to point the finger of why somebody consistently made you feel a certain way and you're going to stay there, then you're not doing the healing within yourself.
Right.
And then you're just going to stay there.
Yeah.
And then actually you travel backwards. A long time ago we made that, like each time you dig up a corpse, it's uglier and uglier and uglier. Like that's something about resentment. Like if resentment kicks in, then it just gets uglier and uglier and uglier. So, I don't know why anybody would want to stay there. I don't want to.
When you know that you can be free, truly free, and you can experience that freedom, you don't want to stay there. But there is an emotional payoff because you're hurt. And so you're getting this emotional payoff by staying in resentment that your body almost becomes addicted to. But when you say, oh man, to live free of that is freedom, is awesome. And when you were talking about roots, and this image popped into my mind because today Ken is in a field. He's in a dove field. And I said, what are you doing in there today? And he said, I'm spraying all the weeds. And he said, I'm killing all the weeds. That's what he said. I'm spraying all the weeds and killing them. And I said, you're not going to plow them up today? And he goes, no, I'm going to spray them and let them die. And then what I'll do in a sometime period, he probably told me, weeks or whatever, then when they're dead, I'll go plow them under. And he said, and actually that works a lot better because it doesn't gum up the equipment that he uses. And I thought, that's really interesting because we say, I'm going to forgive that person. He's going to spray that weed today, and tonight it's going to look the same. So we can truly forgive somebody today, make that decision, and still feel icky,
Mm-hmm.
Like, for a little bit, it's not like you say, I forgive this person, and then you just, oh, I'm so free. And there is breakthrough, but it doesn't always happen immediately. But then when you go back to it the next time he goes there, and when he plows it under, it's going to be a lot easier to address. And I think that's important. And maybe it's not quite relevant, but I think the analogy kind of comes over that it's not going to happen immediately, necessarily. But you can decide immediately that you're going to forgive.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I love it. I love the topic. That was great.
Yeah. I'm excited about it. I'm excited about sharing it with other people too, because we hear it's not my fault. It's not my fault. And it's one of those phrases that would have been really, I believe, powerful to have had in my pocket when my kids were little. Mom, it's not my fault. Okay, I get that, but what's your responsibility in the situation?
Mm-hmm.
They would have seen it totally different. Our conversations would have been totally different, whether it was school or friendships or sibling quarrels, or if you say, go clean up the den. Well, it's not my fault. That's not my stuff. Well, what's your responsibility to be a member of a family?
Right. Oh my gosh. How many times do we hear that? I love it. I think that will probably, my response will change now that we've had this conversation too, because, and for myself also, that's not my go-to reaction often, but I'm sure that I have thoughts. So I hope that my thoughts start getting caught now when I have a feeling like a victim, like that victim mentality, like kicks in for a second, that I can be like, it doesn't matter whose fault it is. What are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
And forgiving and moving on so that I don't feel stuck in that situation, for me, is always the first choice. So,
I love it.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Well, if you would like to hear more of our podcasts or find out a little information about Dee Dee and my coaching, please go to www.liveyourdesign.life. Thanks for joining us.